"You kissed me while I was out." The rancher, shocked, her reply changed everything. He was a man of routine, careful and dependable, someone people in the small town respected for his honesty and hard work. He was known to be quiet, not one to show his feelings openly, but anyone who knew him understood that beneath his calm exterior was a heart that cared deeply. The ranch had been in his family for generations, and he carried that responsibility with pride. Each fence he repaired, each animal he fed, was a small piece of the life he had chosen, a life that was peaceful and predictable. Her presence had been part of that peace, though in ways he hadn't fully realized. She had moved to the area a few years ago, a woman with a bright smile and an energy that seemed to light up the quiet corners of the town. She was independent, confident, and carried herself with a sense of ease that drew people toward her. From the very beginning, they had become friends. She admired the way he cared for the ranch, the dedication in his work, and the quiet strength in his demeanor. He, in turn, had grown to appreciate her honesty and warmth, the way she could talk about anything, yet somehow make the ordinary moments feel special. Their friendship was comfortable, easy, built on years of shared experiences, small conversations over fences, and the occasional help in the barn or the field. That afternoon had started like any other. He had been up with the sun, feeding the animals, checking fences, and preparing for the day's work. She had come by to deliver some homemade bread, just as she often did, bringing laughter and light conversation to the otherwise quiet ranch. They had shared a cup of coffee, talking about the week, the weather, and small-town news. It was a simple, pleasant morning, filled with the kind of easy companionship that felt natural and unforced. But then, he needed to run into town for a few errands. There were supplies to pick up, some paperwork to take care of, and a few messages to deliver. He trusted her completely and felt at ease leaving her at the ranch for a short while. He gave her a quick wave, smiled, and promised to be back soon. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of hay and earth, and as he mounted his truck, he felt the familiar comfort of his life, never suspecting that this day would hold a surprise unlike any other. He returned to the ranch later that afternoon, tired from the errands but content with the work he had accomplished. The sky had shifted from bright morning light to the softer hues of late afternoon, shadows stretching across the open fields. He slowed as he approached the house, noticing a quiet stillness that made him pause. Something felt different, though he couldn't immediately place it. His heart skipped a beat when he saw her standing by the porch, a small smile playing on her lips. There was a warmth in her gaze that he hadn't noticed before, a subtle intensity that made him stop mid-step. Then it happened. The memory of the moment would stay with him forever. She stepped forward, and before he could even react, she kissed him. It was a soft, gentle kiss, not hurried or careless, but deliberate and full of feeling. His mind froze for a moment, caught between shock and something he couldn't name. He pulled back slightly, his eyes wide, searching hers for some explanation, some sign that this was a mistake or a joke. But there was nothing of the sort. Her expression was calm, steady, yet there was a spark of emotion that made it clear she meant every bit of it. He stepped back a little unsteady, and the words came out before he could stop them. "You kissed me while I was out." His voice was a mix of surprise and disbelief, barely hiding the flood of emotions inside him. He had known her for years, trusted her completely, but this was something unexpected, something that shifted the balance of their friendship in ways he hadn't imagined. She tilted her head slightly, a small, knowing smile forming on her lips. There was no embarrassment, no hesitation. Her eyes met his with a sincerity that was impossible to ignore. It was a look that held honesty, a quiet bravery, and a depth of feeling he had never fully acknowledged before. He watched her, waiting for the words, bracing himself for the explanation. What she said next would change everything, but at that moment he could only stand there, heart pounding, unsure of what he was feeling. The silence stretched between them, heavy yet filled with possibility. The ranch, which had always been a place of routine and predictability, suddenly felt charged with a new energy. Every detail seemed more vivid. The way the sunlight hit the porch, the gentle sway of the trees, even the distant sounds of cattle grazing. It was as though the world had paused for this moment, waiting for what would come next. He had to think to process, but his mind was a whirl of conflicting emotions. Shock, confusion, and an undeniable pull toward her filled him at the same time. He had never considered the possibility that she might feel this way, had never thought of their friendship in these terms. And yet, here she was, standing before him, calm and composed, having expressed something that could no longer be ignored. Her presence had always been comforting, but now it felt like a spark, igniting something inside him he hadn't fully recognized. He remembered the small gestures over the years, the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she helped in the barn without complaint, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she loved. Each memory now seemed tinged with a new meaning, a hint of emotions that had always been there but unnoticed. He took a slow breath, trying to steady himself. I don't know what to say, he admitted finally, his voice low, unsteady. The words felt inadequate, but they were honest. He had never been one to rush into feelings or speak without thought, and now, facing something so unexpected, he struggled to find the right response. She nodded slightly, as if she had anticipated this, and took a step closer. "You don't have to say anything right now," she replied softly. Her voice was gentle, reassuring, yet filled with quiet confidence. "I just wanted you to know how I feel." There was no pressure, no demand, only honesty and courage. He felt a mix of relief and confusion. Relief because she had spoken her truth openly, and confusion because he didn't know how to respond immediately. His life had always been simple, predictable, and this moment was anything but. It challenged him, stirred emotions he had kept carefully under control, and yet it also awakened something deep inside, something he hadn't expected to find. For a long moment, they simply stood there, looking at each other. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the ranch, the quiet fields, and the connection between them. It was a pause filled with possibility, a moment where everything could change, yet nothing had yet been decided. Finally, he spoke again, his voice steadier this time. I didn't expect this," he admitted, a small smile breaking through his initial shock. "But I'm glad you told me." There was sincerity in his words, a recognition that whatever happened next, honesty had bridged a gap that might have stayed unspoken for years. She smiled back, a mixture of relief and happiness in her expression. It was a smile that held promise, that suggested that even the most unexpected moments could lead to something beautiful. And as they stood there, the afternoon light softening around them, he realized that his life, which had always been steady and predictable, had just opened a door to something new, something that might change everything. The day continued quietly, with the ranch returning to its familiar rhythms, but the moment lingered in his mind. Every sound, every movement, every glance seemed to carry a hidden meaning now. The ranch, once only a place of work and routine, had become a place where hearts could speak, where emotions could be revealed, and where life could take unexpected, wonderful turns. And as he went about his chores that evening, he couldn't help but replay the moment over and over, wondering what would come next, but quietly grateful that it had happened. Because in that simple, unexpected kiss, he had glimpsed a future he hadn't dared imagine, a future where feelings were no longer hidden, and where honesty had the power to change everything. He stood there for a moment, still processing what had just happened. Her words had been simple, honest, and clear, yet they carried a weight that he had not expected. She hadn't rushed him, demanded anything, or tried to explain too much. She had simply told him how she felt. That honesty hit him like a quiet, steady wave, unexpected, yet comforting. He had spent so much of his life working on the ranch, dealing with routines, responsibilities, and expectations, that he had rarely allowed himself to think about matters of the heart in such a direct way. But now he couldn't ignore it. He looked at her again, really looked, noticing details he had somehow missed before. The way her hair caught the sunlight, the small crease of worry at the edge of her eyes that softened when she smiled, the calm confidence in the way she stood. Each small thing made him realize that there was more to his feelings than he had admitted, even to himself. He had always felt drawn to her, had always appreciated her presence, but he had never thought it could go beyond friendship. And yet, now that the moment had arrived, he felt something shift inside him. I think I understand," he said finally, his voice steadying as he searched for the right words. "I didn't expect this, and I didn't know you felt that way. But now I think I've been feeling something too without realizing it." His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had never been good at expressing emotions, but this time he felt compelled to be honest. Her smile widened slightly, though it remained gentle and calm. "You don't have to say more than you feel," she replied softly. "I just wanted you to know. That's all I needed." Her words carried patience and understanding, giving him space to process what was happening without pressure. There was a quiet strength in her approach, a confidence that made him feel safe in revealing himself, step by step. They moved to sit on the porch, letting the warmth of the late afternoon sun wrap around them. The ranch stretched out before them, fields golden with sunlight, animals grazing calmly, and the air carrying the faint scent of hay and earth. It was peaceful as it had always been, yet there was a new energy now, a gentle tension that hummed quietly between them. It was not overwhelming or awkward. It was simply a shared understanding that something important had changed. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent so many years here, focused on work and the ranch. I've never really allowed myself to think about this." He gestured vaguely between them, feeling a little foolish but determined to be honest. "But now that it's happened, I can't stop thinking about you." There was vulnerability in his tone, a rare glimpse of the man behind the calm, dependable exterior. She reached out and lightly touched his hand. The contact was brief, reassuring, and full of meaning. "That's all I ever wanted," she said. "I didn't expect you to have an answer immediately. I just wanted to be honest, and I wanted you to know how I feel. The rest, we can figure out together." Her words were simple, yet they carried a sense of promise and hope that made his heart swell. He took a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. The world around them seemed to slow down, each sound and movement more vivid, more alive. He thought of all the years he had spent on this ranch, the routines he had followed, and the friendships he had cherished. And he realized that this honesty, this connection, was a new kind of routine, one worth cherishing even more than the old, predictable rhythms of his life. For the first time, he allowed himself to smile fully, without reservation. "I never thought, I didn't realize until now, but I care about you too, more than I should have admitted even to myself." The words felt awkward at first, but as he spoke them, they felt right. They were true, and they carried the weight of years of hidden feelings finally being brought to light. She laughed softly, a sound that was light and musical, filling the quiet spaces around them. "I had a feeling," she said, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "But I wanted you to find it on your own in your own time. I didn't want to rush anything." Her patience amazed him. She had taken a brave step in expressing herself, yet she had given him the freedom to respond in his own way. It was a balance he had rarely experienced, and it made him appreciate her even more. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the ranch, they talked for hours. Not about grand declarations or dramatic plans, but about small things, their daily routines, their hopes, their favorite memories on the ranch, and the simple joys that had always connected them. Each word, each laugh, each glance strengthened the bond that had always been there, now illuminated by honesty and shared feelings. He realized that this moment, which had begun with surprise and uncertainty, was turning into a memory he would treasure forever. It was not just about a kiss or a sudden revelation. It was about the courage to speak the truth, the willingness to listen, and the trust that had grown between them over years of friendship. He understood that love could arrive quietly, in small gestures and honest words, and that it could transform even the most ordinary days into something extraordinary. Night began to fall, the sky painted in deep blues and purples, with stars slowly appearing one by one. The ranch, so familiar and comforting, now felt like a place of new beginnings. They sat together in the quiet, watching the first lights of evening appear, both lost in thought and yet completely aware of each other's presence. The air carried a gentle calm, and yet beneath that calm there was a quiet excitement, an awareness that life had changed in a subtle but powerful way. Finally, he turned to her, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I don't know what the future holds," he said honestly. "I only know that I want to explore this with you." His words were simple, yet they carried a promise, a willingness to step into the unknown, guided by trust and mutual respect. She nodded, her own smile reflecting a mixture of relief and joy. "I'd like that," she replied softly. "We can take it one step at a time, that's all we need." Her calm assurance balanced his cautious excitement perfectly. They didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. They simply needed honesty, patience, and a willingness to see where their feelings would lead them. The night grew darker and they finally stood, ready to head inside. As they walked together toward the house, their hands brushed lightly, a small, comforting connection that spoke volumes. It was a touch that carried promise, warmth, and the beginning of something meaningful. They didn't speak much. Words were unnecessary. The quiet understanding between them was enough. Later, inside the cozy warmth of the ranch house, they shared a simple meal, laughing softly at small jokes and enjoying the easy rhythm of each other's company. There was no rush, no pressure, only the quiet joy of being together, of knowing that honesty had opened a door that neither had expected but both had longed for. By the time they settled near the fireplace, the ranch quiet and peaceful outside, he felt a sense of contentment unlike anything he had known before. The kiss earlier in the afternoon, which had shocked him at first, now felt like a turning point, a moment that had shifted his world in a beautiful, unexpected way. He realized that love, when spoken honestly and received openly, could transform even the simplest life into something extraordinary. And as they sat together, the fire casting a warm glow over their faces, he silently thanked the universe for that moment. A moment of courage, honesty, and connection had changed everything. What had begun as surprise had grown into hope, trust, and the quiet promise of a shared future. The ranch, which had always been a place of routine and responsibility, had become the backdrop for a new chapter, a chapter filled with possibility, warmth, and the beginning of a love that had always been waiting quietly, just beneath the surface. He finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Thank you for being honest. For trusting me with this." Life was unpredictable, emotions were powerful, and sometimes the smallest actions, a kiss, a word, a gesture, could change everything. They didn't know exactly what the future would hold, but they were ready to face it together, with honesty, patience, and an openness to the possibilities that lay ahead. And as the night deepened, stars shining bright above the fields, they sat side by side, hearts aligned, beginning a journey neither had expected but both knew they wanted. A journey where trust, courage, and love would guide them, one day at a time, on the ranch that had witnessed not just their work and routines, but now the start of something truly extraordinary.